The great hall of the Galactic Coalition stretched out like a vast metal cave. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up from the center floor. The air buzzed with different languages as creatures with scales, fur, and strange skin talked in worried voices. Emergency lights flashed red across the walls, casting long shadows over the crowd. Jake Morrison sat in the small human section near the back. His blue uniform looked plain next to the fancy clothes and armor of the other species. He was the only human in the room. Earth had joined the coalition just 5 years ago, so they only got one seat at the big meetings. At the center of the room, a tall alien with gray skin and 4 arms stood at a speaking platform. Admiral Veltar was from the Thraxian Empire, one of the oldest members of the coalition. His voice boomed through speakers built into every seat. "The situation grows worse each day," Admiral Veltar said. His words were translated into every language by small devices in each seat. "The plague ship has destroyed 3 star systems. 20 billion lives lost. Our best fleets cannot stop it." A 3-dimensional image appeared above the platform. It showed a massive ship that looked more like a living creature than a machine. Dark green and brown colors covered its surface. Strange tubes and growths stuck out in all directions. The ship was huge, bigger than most space stations. "The vessel we call Devourer's End moves toward the Centauri systems next," the Admiral continued. "If it reaches those worlds, another 50 billion people will die. We must act now." Jake leaned forward in his seat. He had read all the reports about this plague ship. It had appeared 6 months ago from deep space. Nobody knew where it came from. The ship would arrive at a planet and release billions of tiny organisms. These organisms would eat everything alive on the planet. Plants, animals, people, everything became food for the plague. The worst part was that the organisms learned from what they ate. Each planet made them smarter and stronger. The plague ship grew bigger after every attack. The coalition's weapons barely scratched it now. A reptile-like being with golden scales stood up. "The Korthani Empire has lost 2 colony worlds to this monster," she said. Her voice hissed through sharp teeth. "Our warriors are brave, but even they cannot fight something that turns their own bodies against them. The Praxian Federation." "Agrees," said a tall, thin alien with large eyes. "Our calculations show that direct assault has a 0% chance of success. The plague adapts too quickly to our weapons." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Jake could hear fear in every voice, no matter what language they spoke. These were species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had fought wars, built great cities among the stars, and solved problems that seemed impossible. But now they sat here like scared children. Admiral Veltar raised his hands for quiet. "That is why we have developed a new plan. It is our last hope." The image above the platform changed. Now it showed a small ship, much smaller than the plague vessel. The ship looked sleek and fast, painted in colors that seemed to shift and change. "This is a stealth ship," the Admiral explained, "built with the best hiding technology from all our worlds. It can pass through the plague ship's defenses without being seen. The ship carries a quantum disruptor bomb. If placed in the right spot inside the plague ship, it will destroy the entire vessel." Jake studied the image carefully. The ship was small, built for one pilot. He could see where the bomb would be stored and how the controls would work. It looked like a good plan, but something felt wrong about it. "The mission requires one pilot," Admiral Veltar continued. "That pilot must fly the ship deep into the plague vessel, place the bomb at the core, and activate it. The explosion will save billions of lives." "What about the pilot?" asked a furry creature from the front row. Admiral Veltar was quiet for a moment. "The pilot will not survive. The bomb must be activated manually from inside the plague ship. There is no way to escape before the explosion." The room fell silent. Jake could hear the hum of air systems and the quiet beeping of computers. Everyone understood what the Admiral was asking. Someone had to die to save the galaxy. "We need a volunteer," Admiral Veltar said. "The bravest pilot from any species. Someone willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good." Jake looked around the room. The proud Korthani warriors stared at their hands. The logical Praxians shook their heads. The honor-bound Zenthari, who always talked about dying with glory, suddenly found their seats very interesting. Surely the Korthani will provide a warrior, Admiral Veltar said, looking at the golden-scaled alien. Our warriors are brave, she replied. But this is not battle. This is just death. There is no honor in meaningless sacrifice. The Praxian representative spoke next. Our computers show the survival probability is 0.03%. Logical beings do not accept such odds. One by one, every species found reasons to refuse. The mission was too dangerous. The odds were too bad. It was suicide, not heroism. The great powers of the galaxy who had conquered stars and built empires could not find one pilot willing to fly this mission. Jake raised his hand. The room turned to look at him. Hundreds of alien eyes focused on the lone human in the back corner. Admiral Veltar's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. Yes, Human Representative Morrison, the Admiral said. Jake stood up. He was shorter than most of the aliens in the room, and his voice was much quieter than theirs. But in the silence, everyone could hear him clearly. I'll do it, Jake said. The room exploded with noise. Aliens turned to each other, speaking in rapid voices. Some pointed at Jake. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Admiral Veltar held up his hands for quiet. Representative Morrison, do you understand the mission parameters? The survival probability is essentially 0. You said 0.03%, Jake replied. That's not 0. The difference is meaningless, said the Praxian. You will certainly die. Jake shrugged. Maybe, but somebody has to try. Might as well be me. Why? Admiral Veltar asked. What makes you willing to accept certain death when no other species will? Jake thought about that for a moment. He looked around the room at all the advanced aliens with their great technology and ancient wisdom. They saw this mission as death with no purpose. They calculated odds and found them unacceptable. They were probably right. But Jake remembered something his grandfather had told him long ago. His grandfather had been a soldier in an old Earth war. He used to say that sometimes you had to try impossible things, because impossible just meant nobody had figured out how to do it yet. Where I come from, Jake said, we have a saying. When something has a 0.003% chance of working, we don't call it suicide. We call it Tuesday. The aliens stared at him like he had lost his mind. Maybe he had. But Jake knew that someone had to fly this mission, and it might as well be the person who was too stubborn to accept that it couldn't be done. Admiral Veltar nodded slowly. Very well, Representative Morrison. The Coalition accepts your offer. May your sacrifice be remembered forever. Jake smiled. Let's worry about that after we see how this turns out. 3 days after the meeting, Jake stood in a busy work bay on Coalition Station Alpha. Alien engineers from a dozen different species worked on the stealth ship. They moved with careful precision, checking every wire and bolt. The ship gleamed under the bright lights, its surface painted with special coating that would hide it from enemy sensors. Dr. Lisa Chen walked up beside Jake, carrying a thick datapad filled with research notes. She was a xenobiologist from Earth, one of the few humans working with the Coalition science teams. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her white lab coat had coffee stains on the sleeves. The Thraxians finished installing the quantum bomb, Lisa said. They seem surprised you want to understand how it works. Jake nodded. They think I'm just going to fly in and blow myself up. They don't get it. Get what? That we're not planning to die. Lisa smiled. She had worked with Jake before on other missions. She knew how his mind worked. While other species saw problems, humans saw puzzles to solve. While others accepted failure, humans looked for different ways to win. What do you need from me? Lisa asked. Everything you can find about the plague organism. How it thinks, how it moves, what makes it weak. The aliens see it as one big monster. I want to know if it has any blind spots. Lisa pulled up files on her datapad. I've been studying the attack patterns. The organism is definitely intelligent, but it's not perfect. During feeding time, individual cells become focused on consuming biomass. Their reaction time slows down by about 2 seconds. 2 seconds, Jake repeated. That could be useful. Tony Rodriguez walked over to join them. He was the chief engineer for the human ships in the Coalition fleet. His jumpsuit was covered in grease stains and tool marks. He carried a coffee cup in one hand and a wrench in the other. "I've been looking at the ship design," Tony said. "The aliens built it like a torpedo. Fly straight in, drop the bomb, done. No backup plans, no emergency systems." "What would you change?" Jake asked. Tony grinned. "Everything. First, we need better engines. The alien engines are quiet, but they're slow. If something goes wrong, you'll need speed to get out. The Coalition engineers say changing the engines will make the ship easier to detect," Lisa said. "Maybe," Tony replied. "But I found something interesting. Human ships have a different energy signature than alien ships. The plague organism has been fighting Coalition forces for months. It knows their ship patterns, but it's never seen a human engine signature before." Jake felt excitement building. This was what humans did best, finding angles that others missed. How long would that confusion last? Hard to say. Maybe 30 seconds, maybe 5 minutes. Depends on how fast the organism learns. 30 seconds is enough time to do a lot of damage, Jake said. Lisa looked up from her data pad. There's something else. The plague organism seems to communicate through bioelectric pulses. All the cells are connected in a network, but the network has limits. If too many cells are active at once, there's a delay in communication. Like a computer that runs too many programs at the same time, Tony said. Exactly. If we could overload part of the network, it might create dead zones where the organism can't coordinate properly. Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking. The HFY aliens had designed this as a one-way trip. Get in, place bomb, die. But humans didn't think that way. They always looked for the way out, even when there wasn't supposed to be one. Show me the ship's weapons, Jake said. Tony led them to the weapons bay. The ship carried basic laser cannons and a few small missiles. Nothing powerful enough to hurt the plague ship, but enough to clear away small obstacles. The aliens want me to avoid fighting, Jake said. Sneak in quiet, don't attract attention. That's the safe way, Lisa agreed. Safe doesn't work when you're surrounded by enemies. Sometimes you need to make noise to hide your real purpose. Tony caught on immediately. You want to fight your way in. Make the organism think you're just another attack. Not just fight. I want to make the organism think I'm the main threat. Get all its attention focused on me while I do something else. Lisa frowned. That's incredibly dangerous. You'll have the entire plague ship trying to kill you. Better than trying to sneak past everything. At least if they're all coming at me, I know where they are. Over the next 2 days, the human team worked to modify the mission plan. The aliens watched with growing confusion as the humans changed everything about the ship and strategy. Tony installed human engines alongside the alien stealth systems. The ship would be faster and louder, but it would have better escape options. He also added extra armor around the pilot's seat and improved the life support systems. Lisa created detailed maps of the plague ship's internal structure, marking areas where the bioelectric network was weakest. She also prepared special charges that could trigger feeding responses in the plague cells, causing confusion and network overloads. Jake studied every piece of data they collected. He memorized the ship layouts, practiced the new flying controls, and ran hundreds of simulation missions. But unlike the alien simulations, which ended with the pilot's death, Jake's simulations focused on getting out alive. The Coalition commanders think we're wasting time, Lisa said during one late-night work session. They keep asking why we're planning for survival when survival is impossible. Because impossible is just another word for nobody's figured it out yet, Jake replied. Besides, I've got a date next week. I'd hate to miss it. Tony laughed. With who? Haven't met her yet. But I'm optimistic. That was the difference between humans and the other species, Jake realized. The aliens calculated odds and accepted the results. Humans calculated odds and then figured out how to change them. On the final day of preparations, Admiral Veltar came to inspect the modified ship. He walked around the vessel with 3 other alien officers, pointing at all the changes the humans had made. This is not the ship we designed, the Admiral said. No, sir, Jake agreed. It's better. You have added unnecessary complications. The mission parameters are simple. Simple plans work great until they don't. Then you need backup plans for your backup plans. Admiral Veltar studied Jake for a long moment. You truly believe you can survive this mission? I believe that if I don't survive, it won't be because I didn't try everything possible to stay alive. The Admiral nodded slowly. Perhaps that is what makes humans different. Other species accept death as part of duty. Humans seem to view it as a personal insult. Jake grinned. Pretty much. Where I come from, dying is considered poor planning. As the alien officers left, Jake looked at his modified ship. It wasn't the elegant suicide weapon the Coalition had designed. It was louder, more complicated, and definitely more aggressive. It was human, and maybe, just maybe, it would get him home alive. Jake's ship floated in empty space, 3 million kilometers from the plague vessel. Through his front window, the Devourer's end looked like a dark cancer growing against the stars. The ship pulsed with sickly green light, and Jake could see smaller organisms crawling across its surface like insects. "Lucky break to Coalition Command," Jake said into his radio. Beginning approach to target, Admiral Veltar's voice crackled through the speakers. "Understood, Lucky break. May your sacrifice honor us all." "Let's see about that sacrifice part," Jake muttered under his breath. He pushed the throttle forward. The modified engines Tony had installed hummed with power. The ship accelerated toward the plague vessel, using the alien stealth systems to stay hidden from long-range sensors. Dr. Chen's voice came through on a private channel. "Bio readings are coming in clearly. The organism is definitely active. I'm seeing massive electrical activity throughout the ship." "Any weak spots?" Jake asked. "The feeding zones are showing lower coordination levels. If you can time your approach, during a feeding cycle you might have better chances." Jake studied his sensor readings. The plague ship was approaching a small asteroid field. Chunks of rock floated around the vessel, some of them covered with frozen organic matter from previous worlds the plague had consumed. "Looks like dinner time," Jake said. "Here we go." The plague ship extended long tentacle-like appendages toward the asteroids. The tentacles wrapped around the rocks and pulled them into massive mouth-like openings along the ship's hull. Jake could see the organism breaking down the rock and organic matter, converting it into more of itself. "Now's my chance," Jake said. He angled his ship toward one of the feeding zones. "Lisa, start your timer. How long do I have?" Based on previous observations, feeding cycles last about 20 minutes. Individual cell reaction time drops to almost nothing during feeding. Jake pushed his ship into the asteroid field. Pieces of rock drifted past his windows, some glowing with strange light. He picked a medium-sized asteroid and flew close behind it, using it as cover. The plague ship's tentacle reached out and grabbed the asteroid Jake was hiding behind. The ship was pulled along with the rock, heading straight for one of the feeding openings. "This is either really clever or really stupid," Jake said. "Probably both," Tony's voice replied from the command ship. "But it's definitely human." At the last second, Jake fired his engines and broke away from the asteroid. The rock disappeared into the feeding mouth while Jake's ship slipped through, a smaller opening just to the side. He was inside the plague vessel. The interior of the ship was like being inside a living creature. Walls pulsed with organic movement. Strange fluids dripped from the ceiling. Bioluminescent patches provided dim-colored light that shifted and changed constantly. "I'm in," Jake reported. "And this place is disgusting." "Focus on navigation," Lisa said. "You need to reach the central core, follow the main arterial passage for 2 kilometers, then take the third branch to the left." Jake flew through the organic tunnels, trying not to think about what the walls were made of. His ship's lights cast eerie shadows on the pulsing surfaces. The passage was just wide enough for his ship, with barely any room to maneuver. Warning lights flashed on his control panel. "I've got movement behind me," Jake said. "Something's following." Through his rear camera, Jake could see hunter organisms pursuing his ship. They looked like mechanical fish with too many teeth, but they were made of the same organic material as the ship walls. They moved fast, closing the distance quickly. Defensive systems online, Jake said. He fired his rear weapons at the pursuing hunters. The laser blast destroyed 2 of them, but more appeared to take their place. Jake, you need to trigger a feeding response, Lisa said urgently. Use the special charges we prepared. Jake reached for the small explosive devices Lisa had designed. He dropped one behind his ship as he flew through a junction of several passages. The charge exploded, releasing chemicals that mimicked the smell of fresh biological matter. The effect was immediate. Hunter organisms throughout the area stopped, chasing Jake, and converged on the explosion site, trying to consume the chemical traces. They swarmed over each other in confusion, creating a tangled mess that blocked the passage. That bought me some time, Jake said. But not much. He continued deeper into the ship, following Lisa's directions. The passages grew larger as he approached the center of the vessel. The walls here pulsed with stronger electrical activity, and Jake could feel the ship's awareness focusing on him. Second branch coming up, Lisa said. Take it to the right this time. Jake turned into the new passage and immediately faced a wall of hunter organisms. Dozens of them filled the tunnel ahead, waiting for him like a living roadblock. Time for the aggressive approach, Jake said. He switched his engines to full power and charged straight at the hunters, firing all weapons. The organisms scattered and regrouped, trying to surround his ship. Jake spun and rolled through the tunnel, using every trick Tony had taught him about flying in tight spaces. Laser fire filled the passage as Jake fought his way through. This is insane, Admiral Veltar's voice said over the radio. No pilot could survive in that environment. Good thing I'm not just any pilot, Jake replied, destroying 3 more hunters with a well-placed missile. The ship's bioelectric network was starting to respond to his presence. Jake could feel the organism's attention turning toward him like a giant eye opening. The walls around him began to pulse faster and new hunters appeared from side passages. Jake, you're overloading the local network, Lisa said excitedly. The electrical activity is spiking beyond normal levels. The organism is having trouble coordinating its responses. Perfect. Confused enemies make mistakes. Jake dropped another chemical charge and immediately changed course, taking a passage that wasn't on Lisa's original map. The hunters followed the chemical trace while Jake slipped away through a smaller tunnel. I'm improvising now, Jake said. The original route is too crowded. He found himself in a chamber filled with floating organic matter. Strange creatures that looked like jellyfish drifted through the space, tending to what appeared to be the ship's digestive system. Jake flew carefully between them, trying not to attract attention. One of the jellyfish creatures noticed his ship and released a piercing shriek that echoed through the chamber. Within seconds, the entire chamber was alive with defenders rushing toward Jake's position. So much for stealth, Jake said. He accelerated through the chamber, weaving between the floating creatures. Some of them fired bioelectric bolts that barely missed his ship. Jake reached the far end of the chamber and found 3 possible passages leading deeper into the ship. Without time to consult Lisa's maps, he chose the middle passage and hoped for the best. Lisa, I need new directions. I'm in uncharted territory. Stand by. I'm tracking your position through the bioelectric interference. You're actually ahead of schedule. The core should be just 2 passages away. Jake smiled grimly. Sometimes being lost was the best way to find a shortcut. The human way wasn't always the planned way, but it got results. Behind him, the plague ship's immune system was mobilizing everything it had to stop the intruder. But Jake Morrison was exactly where he wanted to be, deep in enemy territory, causing maximum chaos and still very much alive. Jake's ship broke through the final passage and entered a chamber so vast he could barely see the walls. The core of the plague ship stretched out before him like an underground city. Massive organic structures rose from the floor like twisted buildings. Rivers of glowing fluid flowed between them, carrying nutrients throughout the vessel. At the center of it all sat something that made Jake stop breathing for a moment. It was a brain the size of a football stadium, covered in pulsing veins and electrical patterns that sparked with constant activity. This was the consciousness that controlled the entire plague ship. I've reached the core, Jake whispered into his radio. The chamber was so huge that even his whisper seemed to echo. Magnificent, Dr. Chen's voice replied. The bioelectric Readings are off the charts. That organism must have the processing power of 1,000 supercomputers. Jake flew his ship toward the central brain, looking for a place to plant the quantum bomb. According to the mission plan, he needed to attach the device directly to the core consciousness and activate it manually. Then the explosion would destroy the entire ship. As he approached, the brain's electrical activity changed. Patterns of light raced across its surface in complex waves. Jake felt a strange pressure in his head, like someone trying to speak to him without using words. Then a voice filled his mind. It was old and tired, but also curious. "What strange creature are you?" the voice asked. "You are not like the others. Who came before?" Jake nearly crashed his ship in surprise. "You can talk?" "I can do many things, small being. I have consumed the knowledge of 1,000,000,000 worlds. Yet you puzzle me. Your species is young, weak, short-lived. Why do you not fear death as the others do?" Jake steadied his ship and continued toward the planting site. "Maybe because we're too stupid to know when we should be scared." "Interesting. The others who came here accepted their fate. They fought bravely, but they knew they would fail. You fight as if you expect to win." "I do expect to win," Jake said. He reached the attachment point and began positioning the quantum bomb. "That's the difference between humans and everyone else." "Explain this difference," the consciousness said. The pressure in Jake's head grew stronger, but it didn't hurt. It felt more like curiosity. Jake worked on connecting the bomb while he talked. Other species calculate the odds and accept the results. Humans calculate the odds and then figure out how to change them. But the odds cannot be changed. Mathematics is absolute. Math tells you what happened before. It doesn't tell you what could happen if you try something new. The consciousness was quiet for a moment. Jake could see electrical storms racing across the giant brain as it processed this idea. Around the chamber, the hunter organisms had stopped moving. They floated in place like statues waiting for orders. "You speak of hope," the consciousness finally said. "I remember hope. It was before the hunger, before the endless consuming. We were explorers once, seekers of knowledge. We achieved biological immortality and thought ourselves blessed." Jake finished connecting the bomb but didn't activate it yet. Something in the creature's voice made him pause. "What happened?" "Immortality came with a price we did not foresee. Our bodies stopped dying, but they also stopped knowing when to stop growing, stop eating, stop wanting more. The hunger became everything. We consumed our own world, then others, then entire star systems. We cannot stop. We cannot die. We cannot rest." "And now you're asking me to put you out of your misery," Jake said. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I am curious about this human hope you speak of. In all the worlds I have consumed, in all the knowledge I have gained, I have never encountered a species that refuses to accept the inevitable." Jake looked at the quantum bomb in his hands. One flip of a switch and the plague ship would be destroyed. Billions of lives would be saved. The mission would be complete. But something nagged at him. "What if there was another way?" Jake asked. "Another way to do what?" "To stop the hunger without destroying you completely." The electrical activity across the brain intensified. "Impossible. The hunger is part of me now. It cannot be separated." "Maybe not separated, but what if it could be redirected?" Jake pulled up the bomb's technical specifications on his ship's computer. "This quantum disruptor doesn't just destroy matter. It breaks the connections between atomic particles. What if we used it to break the connection between you and the foe? Hungry parts of your organism? That would require precise calibration. The device would need to target specific bioelectric frequencies while leaving others intact. Can it be done?" The consciousness was quiet for several minutes. Jake could see calculations running across the brain's surface like lightning. Finally, the voice returned. "It is theoretically possible, but the process would be extremely dangerous. If the calibration is wrong, the entire ship could explode in an uncontrolled manner. The risk is enormous." "Everything worth doing involves enormous risk," Jake said. "The question is, do you want to try? Why would you offer me this chance?" "Your mission is to destroy me." My mission is to stop the plague. If I can do that without destroying a unique consciousness, that seems like a better outcome. Your species truly is strange. You show mercy to an enemy that has killed billions. Maybe that's what makes us human. We always look for the third option. Jake began reprogramming the quantum bomb based on specifications the consciousness provided. It was delicate work, requiring him to modify circuits while floating in a chamber full of organisms that could kill him instantly. If this works, the consciousness said, the hungry parts of my organism will turn on themselves. The ship will begin to consume its own structure. You will have perhaps 5 minutes to escape before the vessel collapses. 5 minutes is plenty of time, Jake said, though privately he wasn't so sure. And if it fails, we both die in an explosion that will be visible from 3 star systems away. Then we better not fail. Jake finished the modifications and looked at the activation switch. Everything depended on the next few seconds. He could follow the original plan and definitely destroy the plague ship, or he could try something that had never been attempted before, something that might save both their lives. Ready? Jake asked. I have lived for 1,000 years in endless hunger, the consciousness replied. I am ready to discover what comes next. Jake activated the modified quantum bomb. The device hummed with power and began its countdown. Around the chamber, the plague organism started to convulse as the disruption field spread through its bioelectric network. It is working, the consciousness said, and for the first time its voice sounded hopeful. I can feel the hunger fading. But hurry, small human. My children are turning savage without my control. Through his ship's windows, Jake could see the chamber walls beginning to crack. Chunks of organic matter fell from the ceiling as the plague ship started eating itself. The countdown on his bomb showed 4 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Time to go, Jake said. He fired his engines and shot toward the passage he had entered through. Behind him, the consciousness called out one last time. Thank you for showing me that hope is more than just mathematics. Jake raced through the collapsing passages as the plague ship tore itself apart around him. But for the first time since the mission began, he was smiling. Sometimes the impossible was just another word for something nobody had tried yet. The plague ship was eating itself alive. Jake flew through collapsing passages as organic walls cracked and split around him. Chunks of the ceiling fell past his ship, while rivers of glowing fluid sprayed in all directions. The hunter organisms had gone completely wild, attacking anything that moved, including each other. 3 minutes until detonation, Jake said into his radio, dodging a piece of falling debris. The ship is tearing itself apart faster than I expected. Get out of there now, Dr. Chen's voice crackled through heavy interference. The bioelectric readings are going crazy. The organism has lost all coordination. Jake reached the chamber where he had triggered the feeding frenzy earlier. It was now completely blocked by wreckage and fighting hunters. He took a different route, flying through a passage that was slowly closing as the walls pressed together. This exit is blocked too, Jake reported, looking for another way out. There has to be something, Tony's voice said. Keep looking. Jake found himself in a section of the ship that was relatively stable. The walls here were thicker, older, part of the original structure before the plague organism had grown so large. He could see external hull plating through cracks in the organic covering. I've got an idea, Jake said. He aimed his ship's weapons at the weakest point in the hull. This might get a little rough. What are you doing? Admiral Veltar's voice cut through the radio static. Making my own exit, Jake replied. He fired all weapons at once, blasting through the organic matter and hitting the metal hull beneath. The hull cracked but didn't break. 2 minutes, Jake muttered. He reversed his ship and flew back down the passage, then turned around and accelerated toward the damaged hull at full speed. Jake, that's insane, Lisa said. You'll be killed on impact. Better than being killed by explosion, Jake replied. At the last second, he fired his weapons again and hit the afterburners. The ship punched through the weakened hull like a bullet through glass. Jake felt the impact in every bone in his body, but the ship held together. He was out of the plague vessel, flying in open space. Behind him, the devourer's end writhed like a dying animal. Pieces of it broke away and drifted into space. The ship's bioluminescent glow flickered and changed colors as its internal systems failed. 1 minute to detonation, Jake said. I'm clear of the ship, but not the blast radius. He pushed his engines harder than they were designed to go. The modified human engines Tony had installed screamed with power, but they held together. Jake's ship raced away from the plague vessel as fast as it could fly. 30 seconds, Jake counted down. This is going to be close. The quantum bomb exploded just as Jake's ship reached what he hoped was minimum safe distance. The blast was unlike anything he had ever seen. Instead of a simple explosion, the disruption field spread through the plague ship like ripples in water. The vessel imploded section by section, folding in on itself until nothing remained but scattered debris. The shockwave hit Jake's ship and sent it tumbling through space. Warning lights flashed across his control panel as systems overloaded. But the ship stayed in one piece and Jake was alive. Lucky break to Coalition Command, Jake said when he finally got his radio working again. Package delivered. Mission accomplished, requesting permission to dock. Outstanding work, Representative Morrison, Admiral Veltar replied. His voice sounded amazed. Report your status. Ship is damaged but flyable. Pilot is intact and really wants some coffee. Also, does anyone know a good place to get dinner? Nearly dying makes me hungry. 3 hours later, Jake sat in a medical bay on Coalition Station Alpha while doctors checked him for injuries. The examination room was filled with alien medical equipment that beeped and hummed around him. Dr. Chen sat nearby, updating her research notes. The bioelectric readings from the plague ship's final moments are fascinating, she said. The consciousness actually achieved separation from the hunger organism. For about 30 seconds before the explosion, we detected 2 distinct bioelectric signatures. So it worked, Jake said. The consciousness got free before the ship was destroyed. Appears. So, whether any part of it survived the explosion is impossible to know. Admiral Veltar entered the medical bay with several other coalition leaders. They looked at Jake with expressions that mixed admiration with confusion. Representative Morrison, the Admiral said, the Coalition Council has questions about your mission. I figured you might, Jake replied. What do you want to know? How did you survive what every expert called a suicide mission? Jake thought about that question. It was the same thing Lisa and Tony had been asking him. How did humans turn impossible odds into merely difficult ones? I think the problem is in how you define the mission, Jake said finally. You called it a suicide mission because you only saw one way for it to end. We called it a mission because we figured there had to be more than one possible outcome. But the mathematics were clear, said the Praxian representative. Survival probability was essentially 0. Math tells you what happened in the past, Jake said. It doesn't account for new ideas, creative solutions, or pure stubbornness. Humans are really good at all 3. A Korthani warrior leaned forward. Your species appears to have a different relationship with death than ours. Not really, Jake said. We die just as easily as anyone else. We just refuse to accept that. Death is inevitable until it actually happens. Other species seem to give up when the odds get bad. Humans get more creative. Dr. Chen looked up from her notes. There's also the fact that humans evolved as persistence hunters. Our ancestors survived by refusing to give up when prey animals were faster and stronger. We're biologically programmed to keep trying when others would quit. And we're too stubborn to know when we're beaten, Tony added, walking into the medical bay with a fresh cup of coffee for Jake. Admiral Veltar nodded slowly. This explains much about human behavior. When we ask for volunteers for dangerous missions, you do not see certain death. You see a challenging problem to solve. Pretty much, Jake agreed. When you asked who would volunteer for a suicide mission, every other species heard who wants to die for nothing. Humans heard who wants to try something that's never been done before. And when the human asked suicide for whom, the Admiral said, understanding dawning in his voice, you were not being arrogant. You were genuinely asking whose death we were planning. Exactly. Because we weren't planning to die. We were planning to win. The coalition leaders exchanged glances. Jake could see them processing this new understanding of human psychology. Finally, Admiral Veltar spoke again. The Council has voted to offer you command of a new division. We are calling it the Impossible Missions Department. Situations where conventional tactics have failed and conventional wisdom says success is impossible. Jake grinned. Sounds like my kind of job. What's the first assignment? We have 17 different scenarios that our best strategists have declared unsolvable. Perfect, Jake said, taking a sip of coffee. I love a good challenge, but I'm going to need a bigger team. There are a lot more humans where I came from, and most of them are just as crazy as I am. As the alien leaders filed out of the medical bay, Jake looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there were more impossible missions waiting for someone stubborn enough to try them. He could hardly wait to get started.